More transformative news for Nebraska's recruiting class. And we have roster math coming next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year.
All right, welcome. It is Wednesday, July 2. Connor Happer here from 1620 The Zone. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic as we get you going here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Lot going on for Nebraska football at the moment, like a surprising amount kind of going on as a few things that we'll discuss today. We're less than now 3 weeks away from Big Ten Media Days. There was another development on that front, I suppose, yesterday, which we could talk about. But the focal point here has been recruiting. Over the last 31 days, Nebraska has gotten commitments from 9 2026 recruits, bringing their class up to 12 now, including yesterday, Larry Miles, wide receiver from Winter Garden, Florida. He is continuing the Flobraska movement, which has some steam, and we could talk about the verbiage here in a second. But like I said, 12 commits, a route running, smaller type of receiver, think like Ja'Cory Barney, basically, on this team. And that's another guy from the Miami area as well. First of all, Mitch, I guess from a recruiting standpoint, it's Nebraska needed a big month of June. They got it. And they have some momentum. But I guess the other thing here is anytime anyone commits from anywhere, we like to talk about the pipelines from those places, really creeping up. In this case, Nebraska actually does have some momentum in South Florida, it seems.
Yeah, Winter Garden. So it's funny because Cortez Mills and Ja'Cory Barney were tweeting at Larry Route Runner Miles. I like the handle there on Twitter. It's a very, very creative name. They were tweeting at him and calling him little brother and all that. So 3 classes in a row, Nebraska's got a slot receiver. Let's just put it that way, from Florida. I don't want to pigeonhole these guys and say like they're smaller or no, they are. They're all like around 6 foot or slightly less than that. But whatever, similar types of receivers, and I guess they all know each other. Larry Miles is from the Orlando area, which where Winter Garden is. So I don't know. It's a small state. I guess there's not that many people there. They're all buds.
Florida, notoriously small state. Yeah, so that's not. I misspoke. Then it's not particularly.
No, I'm the one saying that. It's like they all seem to be in the same camp. Like Mills was calling Larry his little bro. I guess they've all worked together in some way, or perhaps they've just gotten to know each other on the recruiting trips. Like I think Barney and Mills did have some connection before they got to Nebraska, and then Larry came in. Maybe he knew them too, and he got to be with them on his visit. The Flobraska thing, it reminds me too much of Calabraska, which went over very badly. So you don't do like Texabraska or Canbraska, Oklabraska. Like, I think it should be retired. That kind of mixing of the state names, and we can just speak in like normal terms and say Nebraska has a Florida pipeline that's going well.
So they did this, like you mentioned, they had Calabraska before, but the first time this cropped up was several years ago. And they were calling it Florabraska, like keeping the I in there. And I think that makes a lot more sense than Flobraska. I like that a lot better. So obviously they're going Flobraska, which seems kind of odd. I'm generally with you on the takeaway though, but I do think if they changed it up a little bit, tinkered with it, and went back to Florabraska, that actually sounds a little bit better. Maybe it would hit harder with people.
Okay. I'm
You're out.
I'm anti
You're out.
I'm anti mixing of state names. They're trying to do this like like it's a relationship between two people when you talk about and you like mix their name together like
Bennifer.
Yeah, that's the one I was trying to think of. Is there a Taylor one of those? Like is there a trailer or a Tavis? Did they do that?
I don't think they would call trailer would be funny, but I think they would just, just all goes into the Swifty kind of universe, I guess, at this point.
Well, I'm against it when it comes to mixing state names in recruiting. So that's where I stand on that. Where I also stand is that this stretch in recruiting that may or may not have come to an end on Tuesday with the addition of Larry Route Runner Miles has been transformative for Nebraska's progress as a program in recruiting. And that is a massive thing as you build toward trying to turn yourself into a college football playoff contender. You have to be able to recruit well, even in this day of the transfer portal and adding players in non-conventional ways. If Nebraska wants to compete with the Ohio State and Michigan level teams in the Big Ten, you got to be able to go out and get 4-star players and occasionally compete for a 5-star kid. And for a good portion of this recruiting cycle, it looked like Nebraska was going to have a more difficult time doing that with the 2026 class. You can't just, I saw some like narratives like, well, they're waiting until 27 because they've got the great start with Trey Taylor in 27, and that's going to be a big splash class. Like, you want all of your classes to hit.
Correct. Yeah.
And you don't take it. It doesn't
one. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't just take a year off and say, well, this is a smaller group, so we're content to not really do well there. And the Huskers were ranked like around the bottom of the Big Ten when
at the bottom. I mean, they were like last going into the month, basically.
Yeah, and now I think you can kind of do away with some of those rankings. I don't think I wrote about this today on The Athletic. Like, recruiting is it all requires perspective, and much of how you judge a class is how did those players fit and how did they hit? Did you develop them? Did you keep them for more than, a handshake on campus? And so if Nebraska's sitting like 7th or 8th or 9th in the Big Ten, or even, when this thing is all said and done, you have to have perspective and understand like it was a smaller class because of where Nebraska's at with the roster math. But where you don't want to be is like 17th or 18th in the league.
Yeah.
Under any circumstance.
You know what's funny too, Mitch? I've heard some people, speaking of narratives, I've heard some people talk about like people in the recruiting industry mention the idea that like recruiting right now feels like it used to. It feels, the last couple of years with the whole NIL and obviously the freedom of movement and all that stuff, it's kind of gotten wacky and pay for play. Like, for whatever reason right now, Nebraska's on an old school nice run of getting commitments in the summer at the moment. Like, I don't know what the differentiating factors with that is, but they're doing a really nice job, I think, at the moment. Now, obviously, like you said, you got to take those players and make them good and make them useful and fill out your roster with really, really, really good players, like all of them throughout the roster. But you can't do that unless you start from a certain place. So I like what they've put together so far.
Yeah, I think this last week or couple of weeks has felt like recruiting of old. But, you remember like recruiting of the summer in 2023, there was a commitment every day for Nebraska in June as it put together the 2024 recruiting class. So I don't think you have to go back that far to get the feeling of like old recruiting. Old recruiting to me is like, 1996 or
that old school.
You could go like 2004 recruiting or like even 2013, whatever. I'm making up a year at this point, but the there's always been, every era, every decade, like has its own cadence. So the recruits develop different habits. Do they all recruit? Do they all commit in June like we see now, or is it November? There was a time in recruiting when basically everyone picked right before signing day, and signing day was in February. So there really is no like one way that you get recruiting of old. But I think what I would say is it feels a little more normal here over the past few weeks than it has for the majority of this cycle. And that's, I would say, strictly from a Nebraska perspective, because there are schools out there that have been piling up commits through all of 2025. For Nebraska, the big difference was, and like the big like elephant in the room for Nebraska in recruiting through this cycle, was what's the size of the roster going to be?
Yep.
And until recently, until June 6th, when the House settlement passed, we didn't have official word about how the 105 was going to be handled. We've been hearing about the 105 for a long time, but until then, when the judge in California finally said, okay, you can be over the 105, but you're going to have to designate the players who are over that limit, and you can assign them protected status, and for the remainder of their careers, they will not count against your 105. Until then, we didn't know how big Nebraska's roster was going to be in 2025. And if you don't know how big the roster is going to be, you really don't know how many players you can sign in a recruiting class. So with the normalcy that returned in understanding the roster, we've seen some normalcy return in recruiting. And I think it's as simple as that. And Matt Rhule was recruiting with one hand tied behind his back for much of this calendar year, because he didn't know if he was going to have to cut 25 players. And he found out early in June, and then things took off in recruiting.
Math is a good segue. Roster math, that's a good segue into a Mitch Sherman observation that we'll have when we return after this on the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
Right now, though, before we do that, I want to tell you about Monarch Money. And the question is this: do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? I think everyone could answer that question with a yes. With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. If you want one app to be able to open on your phone, or one site to go to on your computer where you can assess all of your financial goals, see what's going on, what's happening with your spending, Monarch Money is the place for you. Check it out. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right. Back with you on this Wednesday at the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer. We are going to continue with this discussion about roster math, and I will reveal the numbers as I put them together by looking at the roster. Funny how that works.
Nice.
Yesterday, July 1st. But I don't know why we didn't lead the show with this, Connor. I need to get your opinion. Not your opinion. I need to know how you feel about this. Tuesday night. Sorry, I had to gather myself there. Red Panda suffered a fall while she was preparing to perform at halftime of the Minnesota Lynx Indiana Fever game at the Target Center. She fell from her unicycle and clutched her left wrist or forearm. She stood. They were helping her off the court, and she kind of dropped to a knee again. Clearly, something was not okay with the beloved Red Panda. Reports are that she was hospitalized to undergo tests. After the game, Caitlin Clark released a statement via social media while in the locker room celebrating the win with her teammates. She said, "Red Panda, we love you. Of course, we all love Red Panda. How are you doing? Did you see the video? I know you're close to Red Panda. Do you have any thoughts?"
Saw the video. I'm wondering whether is this a setup? Like she doesn't just fall off her unicycle, right? I've never seen anything like that before. She's she admittedly has had some problems lately with, completing the task of catching all the balls and flipping all the balls up on top of her head, going 5 for 5 or 6 for 6 or whatever she does. Admittedly, maybe she has lost a step, but falling off her unicycle, I mean, I was traumatized by seeing this. I hope this isn't it, but I also hope for her, knowing her, because we're close personal friends.
You've been her assistant.
Yeah, I threw her balls.
Mm-hmm.
So and at that game, she was really, really disappointed in herself because she wasn't able to, do it perfectly. So knowing her, she's not taking this very well. I hope that if and when the time is done for Red Panda, she is able to go out on her own terms. But we took a step in the wrong direction last night. Not good.
Okay, well, we're all thinking about Red Panda. I didn't know she did acts in the summer. I thought she stuck to like traditional basketball season, but it's the WNBA season right now, and that's traditional for the women's game. So maybe she's taking on too much. I think in the old days she probably worked November through maybe the end of the NBA season, and then the summer was a time where Red Panda could get a recuperative period. She could physically, it's a physically demanding job. She could get ready for next year. And maybe she should take the month of July, August, September off.
Yeah. Build back up for one more big one or something like that. We got to, she's got to go out on top. Not like this, Red Panda. Not like this.
Well, our thoughts are with you, Red Panda. We hope that you're back on a basketball court with the unicycle and your Bulls very soon. Hopefully nothing too serious other than just a little maybe sprained wrist or something to that effect.
Hope so.
All right, back to the Nebraska football news. So roster math is what we were discussing earlier in the show, and I added things up, looked at the roster, got all the data. And right now, Nebraska is at 126 players in the program. That's 91 who returned from the 2024 team. They have 21 freshman signees, the latest being punter Archie Wilson, who came on in June. 14 portal newcomers, the latest being kicker Kyle Kunanen, who switched over from Charlotte to give Nebraska a third kicking option. So that makes 126. The breakdown in class goes like this: 57 true freshmen, 30 true and redshirt freshmen, 35 sophomores, 15 juniors, 19 seniors. So as I mentioned previously, Nebraska has to designate players that it wants to say would have been cut if the 105 was in effect, and those designated players can count above the limit. They are grandfathered in to the old system. The 30-day period after the House settlement that existed, giving teams time to pick those players, is over on Sunday, July 6th. So Nebraska could have as many as 21. Do we think they'll have 21? Are they going to have 21 players designated on this list, which would get them to camp with 126?
So wouldn't it sort of behoove the program to give themselves as much flexibility as they possibly could? I mean, I know it's sort of it's a mental game too, because I think if you tell those players, hey, we're tagging you, they probably don't. I don't know if they take it very well or whatever, but it does maximize flexibility if you are tagging as many as you possibly can.
It kind of gives them a little bit of a superpower too. Like it's almost a get out of jail free card if you're a player who's been designated that way, because you won't count against the roster limit of any team that you play on.
Right.
If you transfer, you're still protected. So you could play out your entire career and not count against. You will play out your entire career and not count against the 105, even if it's not at Nebraska. Like if you really wanted to do it the way to give yourself the most flexibility, you would take all your true freshmen, and there happen to be 21 of them, and designate all of them as. But that's not going to happen, because
they won't do it.
It's disingenuous.
Yeah.
You have to say that these are the players who would have been cut if we went to 105, and obviously you're not cutting any, certainly not all of your true freshmen. Also, that would kind of be like giving them incentive to transfer because they would be more valuable. If you want to do this, if you're saying we're going to skew young with this, like not be ridiculous and put all of your true freshmen as protected. But if you skew young with it in order to give yourself some flexibility and maybe you pick a freshman or sophomore who wasn't really going to be cut, you potentially could lose that player as a result of it because they'll be more valuable to a team that's looking in the portal. They might get more money, in fact, to transfer because they're not going to count against that team's 105-man roster.
Yeah,
if teams out there even care about the 105 aside from Nebraska.
That's true. I mean, Nebraska is one of the few programs that this like really, really affects because they're so far over. They have been so far over in the past. So that's a part of it too. But because of that, I do think they'll play it legit, because they have some guys who would actually fit into this rule as it's designed. With that being said, I guess I haven't looked at the actual scholarship or the actual roster. Do they fill out the 21? It feels like probably you fall a little bit short of that. Well, that's okay.
Well, if you don't fill it out with 21, then you're going to have to cut some guys in August because your total number of 105 plus the number of protected players cannot it must add up to the number on your roster. So if they say they protect 18, then 3 players are going to have to go. And we'll find out from Matt Rhule. I think we'll probably get some clarity on this at Big Ten Media Days. And if not, then definitely when camp opens a week later, we'll find out if they're still allowed to have some players who are injured that don't count on the 105 and also don't have to be protected. I did the story in the winter about Connor Keneally, the young defensive lineman who suffered an ACL tear in bowl practices. And at that point, it was thought that he was going to be able to save his spot because injured players who were out for an entire season would not have to count against the 105. Now that you have this grandfather clause, you may not have that kind of flexibility to count to leave injured players on the outside. That's going to create a problem if that's the case because eventually teams are going to get down to a hard 105. Nebraska will as soon as the eligibility of all of its protected players expires or they leave the program. And then you're going to want to have the ability to take an injured player and say, okay, you're out for the season. We're not going to count you against the 105. But it's not really a discussion that needs to be had here and now for the Huskers this season. Future years, yes. So they may already have the injured clause in there. And if so, then Nebraska may end up protecting like 15, 16 players and be at 121 and then have 5 who are out, who are on the DL essentially.
Yeah, interesting. Definitely something to address within the next couple of weeks before camp gets going. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. A few things. One regarding Big Ten Media Days from yesterday that came out, and another regarding a tweet from Matt Rhule after this. All right, so Nebraska is taking Marques Buford to Big Ten Media Days, not as a person who's going to answer questions, but mostly it seems like as a person who is going to ask questions. He will be the media correspondent, so be expecting some great content from Marques Buford at Big Ten Media Days in Vegas. I wonder what that.
Yeah, he's like going to join the like the media relations staff for a couple of days, right? Is that how it works? Like you're gonna have you're gonna have I'm thinking Keith, more Seamus, and Marques.
No, I'm thinking more like creative, like, hey, let's go walk out on the strip and ask people some questions,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right on that.
I don't think he's like compiling stats and like shuffling people over to interviews for NBC or Fox. I don't. Maybe.
That'd be hilarious though if he did. He should like interview Gary Danielson, and he might do that. They can get creative with this. First of all, props to Nebraska for doing this. Last year, Minnesota came up with this idea, and it sent kicker Dragan Kesic, who was the reigning Big Ten kicker of the year.
Dragon Quiche.
Oh, God. What?
Nice.
I'm like,
Nice.
his
name is Dragon. His name is Dragon, and that was awesome. That's the only reason why I remember that. I don't just generally know the Minnesota's kicker's name, but that one in particular I do.
Dragon Quiche. This is like Taylor Martinez. Is that the Nebraska?
That's right.
Tater Martinez. Is that what we're talking about here? Is that me now? Am I Lee Corso?
No, I'm just. It has become a bit on the show though for me to just jump in and correct you. So I'm just going to continue to do that. If you don't mind.
Can you pronounce the UCLA quarterback's name for me again today? We're going to do this every day so I can get it down.
Nico Iamaleava.
I stressed the wrong syllable in his last name. All right,
close. Very close.
Dragon Quiche. What like the food is like a breakfast item?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Yeah, quiche.
Okay, good. You're the broadcaster. So he was there and he was carrying around a microphone, and he was actually experienced at doing this before the Gophers took him to media days as a correspondent. He was their social media correspondent. And that's basically what Marques Buford is going to be. Like, I don't think he's going to be putting together packages for the 10 o'clock news or for like Huskers.com. Like it's going to be on their X account and their Instagram account and whatever other socials that Nebraska's flaunting in Vegas. Yeah, it's going to be fun. And he's got the kind of personality that's going to work for it. He's a fun guy, graduated from college already. So, maybe Marques like sees himself in wanting to get into like some of this social media or broadcasting or whatever it might be.
He's a pretty dynamic, personality. I think, I think this makes a lot of sense. Like when I saw this, I was like, oh yeah, he'll do a good job at this. This will be funny.
I love the idea of sending him out on the strip to talk to people.
Oh yeah,
about Matt Rhule. About
what do you think about the Huskers this year? What's the record?
Yeah.
What's the record going to be? It was like, excuse me, what are you talking about?
I mean, here's the number. It's 7.5. Are you taking over under? Like this is
go. It is
can
Vegas.
You go into a sports book and ask questions. Recording devices are, I don't believe, allowed inside sports books. So, but you could stand outside the sports book and talk to bettors as they come out about what they think of the Huskers. Are you taking Nebraska minus 4.5 against Cincinnati?
What did you just bet on, and why wasn't it the Nebraska total over?
We're quickly taking this in a direction that I don't think Nebraska intends it to go, where he can get into gambling analysis on his Big Ten Media Days correspondent material.
It's probably it's considering he is a college football player after all and affect the total of this. That's probably the dangerous ground to go onto, but we're on the right track. We're talking about just goofy stuff that's going to happen. So that'll be filling up your timeline here in just a couple of weeks. The other thing that's been filling people's timeline over the last 48 hours here is one singular Matt Rhule tweet. He dropped in on Monday night, I think it was.
Yeah, it was right after the commitment from Claude and Puma from Chicago.
Okay,
Rhule did this.
The tweet reads as such: too many people have profited off of negativity and despair. Their time is over. And that was it. And then he left, and then he logged off, and that's it.
Those were his final words before he hit the beach in Cape May. He's probably where he is for the fourth weekend. All right. So I don't know why, but I saw this and I was kind of like, okay. Some guy had something to say and he put it out on social media, forgetting entirely that it was Matt Rhule who said it and that everyone who has a take is going to dramatically overreact to these 12 words or whatever they are. Like, people are certain that they know what he's talking about when they actually do not.
I know, which makes it funnier. Like, on one hand, I kind of want somebody to text Rhule like while he's on vacation, be like, hey, what are you actually talking about here? But on the other hand, I don't. I want to keep this conversation rolling for probably 3 or 4 more days and just talk about the possibilities of what he was talking about, because that's kind of fun and there's nothing else to do on the week of the 4th of July.
I got a big laugh out of your assertion that he was talking about these ridiculous AI postings that continue to spread on social media. The latest was a picture of Rhule, several pictures of Rhule, and a military vet, and they were both dressed in like various outfits in the posting. They were hugging on a plane with a stupid and entirely made up story about how Rhule gave the guy his seat. That it must be about that.
I love that.
That entirely makes sense that it would be about that.
Well, I mean, I was shouting out the AI post that came across my Facebook feed because I mean that was one of the rare times that you see a post that's not profiting off of negativity. Everybody, it's all negative.
Yeah, you're right. That wasn't negative. That was positive.
But this particular AI post and most of the stupid, horrible AI posts that are out there are all about how X person. I see a lot about Travis Kelce, by the way. Travis Kelce, pulled a kid out of a burning building or something like that. And, there's a lot of that stuff. So a lot of crap out there these days, including that, but at least it's positive.
I saw somebody share that one yesterday, and I'm not going to say who, but I saw somebody share that one yesterday, and it was like a semi-legit, like, I would say like leader in the community who in like the Husker football community. And I was just like, what are you doing? Like,
don't do that.
Do you believe that? Or I don't know.
Seriously, people see it and they're flabbergasted. Like, I want to believe this, and then they're like, yeah, this is real. What? Because most of the comments I see on it are like, why doesn't the media talk about this? Because the stories are all positive. Why doesn't the media talk about this? Because it didn't happen. It was fake. It didn't exist.
Completely fake. So there is some talk that maybe this comment from Rhule was about the narrative in the media that it was directed at the media, like that's it might have been.
Who knows?
But there's this talk that it was directed specifically at an ESPN article that mentioned in passing. Like, it wasn't an article about Nebraska. It just mentioned in passing, like, among several teams, that Nebraska was one that struggled in recruiting in June. And this article came out before the big day on Monday, and then Tuesday's commitment from Larry Miles. So I don't know. Maybe the author Eli Letterman would change his tune after the Huskers finished June with a bang. But whatever, it was an afterthought in the article. He mentioned 30 teams. So again, when I read that, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Guys putting out some content on June 30th, failing to recognize that Nebraska fans were going to jump all over him. I'm sorry and I don't really know Eli Letterman. I think maybe we've met once, but I'm sorry. I will apologize on behalf of Nebraska fans if your mentions in your emails are completely filled up with people who are all over you because you spent 30 seconds in front of your computer saying, oh, Nebraska didn't really do much in recruiting in June.
Yeah, guy's just trying to do his job. So
was it about that? Was it about that maybe? Or was it about – here's another one. This was about the podcast series that our friends Josh Peterson and Jack Mitchell have put out.
This is what I want it to be about. I immediately texted Josh and he said, I sent him the tweet two minutes after it was tweeted, and Josh was like, you're like the fourth person to send me this already. And I'm like, all right.
So they're actually thinking that.
Perfect.
The entertaining podcast, clever podcast, the Groin Kick Chronicles, that goes through and ranks the 70 losses that Nebraska has endured since the end of the 2014 season. Is that on Rhule's radar? I don't know that it is.
I don't know what's on his radar, man.
Sometimes it does surprise you what's on his radar.
Yeah, it's either a lot or nothing. Depending on the time of the year, depending on what's going on, sort of around him. The best part about all that stuff is when, when that happens, and I immediately go to the replies, the comments of the tweet, and it's just like, hell yeah, coach, this fires me up. Just how do you even know what he's talking about? What if he's talking about just the world in general? GBR, we're winning 8, 9, 10 games this year, we're going to the playoffs. It's I'm not talking about that at all. But maybe it is, or maybe, so this is why we need to keep this mystery going. Just leave it out there. Put the phone away for a couple days and let people talk about this. And then maybe eventually, off to the side at media day, somebody asks him, hey, what was that tweet about? And he'll say it wasn't about football at all. And then we can finally put it to bed. It'd be great.
Oh, he's going to get asked about it on July 22nd.
I know. Bad.
All right. Hey, we've got another show coming for you on Thursday. The expectation is that this busy week is going to continue, more recruiting announcements, and then a mailbag show on Friday, holiday show. We may record that before the holiday and have it ready for you. But if you're driving, I heard that 70 million Americans are traveling
Oh my God.
this holiday weekend, 70 plus. So if you are one of them, you should listen to our mailbag show along your travels. Get your questions in. Send us questions via email, lockedonneb@gmail.com, or you can have a chance that we'll see your questions if you reply in the comment section on YouTube. You can also send them to us via DM or replying to us on Twitter. That Twitter handle is also LockedOnNEB. That is it for this show on Wednesday. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has got the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.